Can you guys hear me?
Now I can hear you. Perfect.
Okay.
How are you?
Awesome.
Glad,
I'm ready to go whenever
glad
you
to
are.
meet you. Yeah, I guess you're are your parents watching? I know they were going to come to B-Sides last year before you got sick.
Yeah, I think my father-in-law is in the Discord chat. We've been talking trash to one another all day. So I said
Yeah,
I most definitely encourage you to come make fun of me in the Discord chat or even afterwards. We have dinner afterwards. So
awesome. All right. Well, we are we're a minute or two late, so I'll turn it over to you. So thanks for coming and stepping in and stepping up and presenting today to wrap up track one. So
yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for having me.
thanks for you.
Awesome. So I gave this talk in I think earlier this year. I want to say maybe January at BSides Tampa. Um, it's if you were there, then I'm sorry. There's not much difference. But I just really wanted to. I thought that this would be pretty great for the Greenville community. Um, it's simply because a lot of pen testing and stuff, there isn't a strong presence of it here in Charleston. Or in South Carolina, excuse me. There's a huge presence. In a lot of the major areas like Atlanta and San Francisco and Seattle and that sort of thing. But what I see a lot of in South Carolina is a lot of IT, a lot of network stuff, auditing and compliance, and a lot of blue team stuff. So essentially, this talk is about my path over the last 12 years from just getting started to where I'm at now. And kind of going into it, the first thing I kind of want to start off with was you know who who likes these type of drives, right? So like if you're going on a road trip or something, and you just got this open highway, you've got like no traffic here, you got no cars on the road, right? Like music is blaring. We'll pretend that it's summer instead of in this picture. It looks like it's in the fall. So your windows are rolled down. And it's just like a scenic route, right? You've got a lot to kind of take a look at. Um, but most of the time, my drives across the country are not like this. A lot of times, it feels like it's like this, right? Just a lot of twists and turns. Terrible if you have a stick shift. It's not as you look, it's not the most efficient way from the top of the hill to the bottom. So going from right to left, and then there's really no way to speed because you're at the mercy of the landscape. And then if there is traffic on this road, you are in for a super long day. Living, at least me moving to Greenville and living in the Greenville area, like Woodruff Road just is bananas to me. And I lived in DC, Maryland, and Seattle. And Woodruff Road, although not as bad as them, is still pretty bad. But showing these two pictures, showing these two things, these two pictures can be correlated to your career as well. So regardless of if you're an InfoSec now, or you're wanting to get into it, or you're kind of just sticking your feet in the water, so to speak, and trying to learn about it, you can typically relate to one of those pictures in regards to your own career. And for me, like I said earlier, I most definitely relate to the second one. My career has been everything but ordinary. It seems like I did everything backwards than what is typically, the typical career path. And it's just been a lot of twists and turns, uncertainty, and then again, often at the mercy of the environment that we're working in. So although I've been doing in some way, shape, or form involved in security for 12 years now, I feel like I have barely scratched the surface. And I think the panel talk beforehand kind of most definitely covered it. Imposter syndrome is real. And every day I'm constantly learning something, or I'm challenging what I have learned, which makes me feel like, oh man, I thought I had a good grip on this, and I most definitely don't. So this talk again is kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to share my story. So this talk is called Offense from Defense, and then my rocky path to the dark side. Dark side being offensive security. So a little bit about me. I'm currently an application security consultant at Invisium. Um, I I recently left the Army National Guard, so was on uh, active duty, the reserves, and the National Guard. I kind of ended my career kind of abruptly. And if you want to know more, you can hit me up on Discord or Twitter. We can most definitely talk about it. But I was a cyber warfare officer within the South Carolina National Guard, and I'm currently a tech mentor for Node Carolinas, which used to be Node SC, and kind of expanded to the North Carolina community as well. Um, most most definitely a code monkey. I normally am working in Python or Go, but I've been recently learning Kotlin and trying to brush up on JavaScript and Java in my day-to-day job. Originally graduated College of Charleston in 2016. Uh, I like to build Legos, so like I'm a huge child, and I just recently had a newborn. So my wife is constantly saying I have to take care of two children, and pursue her the perfect old fashioned. I know it's a simple recipe, but it's so hard to nail it down and get it right. I haven't been able to do it yet. And you have me on webcam right now, so I decided to put a picture of me as Clyde the Cougar, which is College of Charleston's mascot. So this is a picture of me when Clyde, as a mascot, got his ring on ring night. So when I first started doing this talk, I was like, man, I have done a lot of stuff and it's like all over the place. So how can I categorize it? And for me, I kind of, when I laid it all out and kind of broke it down, it seemed like uh, college was me going to college, and my college experience was a huge, turning point, as you'll see in the next slides, in regards to my career. So, quick caveat: this kind of talk isn't most definitely a pitch to go to college, or a pitch to get certifications, or a pitch to do any of that. This is most definitely just a snapshot of me, and this is kind of like the easiest way that I could break it down. To make it easy to understand, easy to digest. So essentially my path pre-college, if you were going to, do a 30,000-foot level snapshot, like this is essentially it. I was born, and then obviously, and then shortly thereafter, I always had a knack for technology growing up, even as a child. My parents love to tell this story, whether I cannot confirm if it's true or not, but I, as a toddler, reprogrammed the VCR, so the time was right on the VCR. Which, if showing my age a little bit, even though I was a toddler, like that was a skill that eluded everyone. Like the time was just always 12 and blinking. But I had my with this, and you might see ITAAH, right? And this is kind of like me trying to be funny, but IT as a hacker, right? So I always knew that I wanted to be a hacker. I wanted to be like the cool guys in the movies that could do all the things, like I'm in with the sunglasses. But it was a long road to even get there. And so I'm originally from Charleston in South Carolina, and growing up, was kind of born into poverty. Like we weren't, my family like weren't homeless, but we also weren't pretty well off. So where this hacker mentality came to be is, how can I do things or get things that typically cost money, but I don't have money. So how do I get around that, right? So how do I bypass these access controls or these safeguards in place to prevent me from doing things that I probably shouldn't be doing, right? And that's kind of where my experience kind of came from, so to speak. Not breaking laws, nothing illegal, nothing crazy, but just having that tinkering, that how do I get somewhere, how do I do something kind of mentality. Fast forward a little bit. I enlisted in the Army at 17, became a human resource specialist actually, but I showed, through my tech background. I mean, I had my first computer, it was a compact Presario my father bought me when I was like 12. And I like the first thing I did was just tear down this tower. And then I remember my father walking back in and losing his mind because there were just pieces all over the place. And then I had to figure out like, okay, I took it apart. That was easy. Like, how do I put it back together? Like, that's not so easy. Um, but kind of taking that snapshot and moving forward, I showed a lot of skill and interest in IT. Started taking some, my platoon sergeant, my military leaders were always like, the Army's paying for free college. If you're not taking advantage of it, you're just a moron. So I was like, I just graduated high school. Like, I don't want to go back to school. And then my leaders were like, stop being stupid. Like, go get this free money and use it. So I started taking classes and then kind of brought that into my own Army career. So when I was in South Korea, I became a sysadmin at 18 for 6 different groups that was spread across 5 different areas across the entire country of South Korea. So all in all, I was responsible for about $250,000 worth of equipment. And some people are like, oh man, that seems like a pretty cool job, like pretty cool full-time job. Well, the fun fact is that my full-time job in South Korea was to be a mailman. It was not to be a sysadmin. So I made sure that people had an amazing Christmas. But I also, it was like, who knows tech stuff? Oh, Pate does. Okay, Pate, you're our guy now. Go make it happen. Um, so being an additional duty as the military, using military speak, it was like once my full-time job of being a mailman was done, then I got the task to go do all the sysadmin stuff, which there's no extra pay or anything. It was just like get it done. So then fast forward, this at this point I was on active duty, so I was a professional soldier. I was a full-time soldier. Shortly from there, was reassigned to Texas, where I worked at the NSA for about a year and a half. And it's here that I got to see a lot more behind the curtain in regards to how the United States government does cyber security things. And a lot of my friends were working on a lot of pretty cool projects. So I was like, oh man, we can do that. Like, that's pretty cool. So it just fueled my passion a little bit more. And then after that year and a half, I got voluntold that I'm going to move to a new unit about 30 minutes down the street. And then 6 months later, I was going to Afghanistan. So deployed to Afghanistan. And then after that, was like, man, I'm really tired and I just want to go back home to Charleston. So decided to go back to school, and utilizing the GI Bill again, went to become a college student. So as you can see, my relevant to information security just kind of exploded at this point. College was a defining moment for me because you see that I split off in essentially 3 different areas. So those 3 areas are the commercial space, so like private industry, going to go work for companies, and then the military side of things, which is in yellow, working as a reservist and then as a National Guardsman. So doing things at the federal, the state, and even the county level in South Carolina. And then the red is kind of like the academia college route. So breaking these down even further, starting with the commercial side, I became an intern at a security consulting company in Charleston called Soteria, not to be confused with Sotera, which is a defense contract company. So started as an intern. There were like 3 co-founders and myself. Like I'm stringing up cable, or helping string up cable and install like security alarm system or security systems like cameras and hit systems, helping set up like internal infrastructure, like help building VMs and just documentation of the company's infrastructure and stuff at the time. And it's funny that I actually met the one of the co-founders at a B-Sides Charleston event. And it just so happens he was like, hey, I heard that you were in the Army. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, cool, I'm starting this consulting company. Tell me more about you, kind of deal. So it was most definitely pretty interesting. So started off as an intern that summer. When school started back up, became a system administrator. Just building out a sim, building out their login capability, like building out all these things, which were great projects for, an intern college student to do. And then even while in college, work ramped up, so got to cut my teeth a little bit on the consulting side of things. Was paired up with like principal and senior consultants where I was able to kind of learn a little bit and not only learn the IT side of things and security side of things, but also learn the business side of things as well. Like how do you talk to clients? How do you interact with clients? And that sort of thing. So simultaneously, I decided at my time in the Army, I didn't want it to be over. I most definitely liked it, but I didn't want to be a professional soldier anymore. So decided to enroll in ROTC at the Citadel and go to school at College of Charleston and became an ROTC cadet. While I was an ROTC cadet, was in the reserves. There is a transportation unit in Charleston. They essentially, their whole job is logistics. I was doing human resources for them, and then I talked to one of the recruiters on the Citadel's campus, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I heard you do cyber stuff. I heard you do security stuff." And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "You want to join the National Guard?" And I was like, "Well, I'm already part of the reserves." And he's like, "Well, South Carolina has a cyber team." And I was like, "Oh, awesome. Can I talk to them?" And he's like, "I don't know who to talk to, but they have one." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, thank you." So, doing a Google search, doing some LinkedIn stuff, I eventually found my mentor, who, long story short, met with me, had a couple beers, and then eventually decided to bring me onto his team doing, essentially blue team type stuff for the National Guard. So this team was developed at the time, Nikki Haley was our governor, and she wanted, in the event that something was to happen in the state of South Carolina, she wanted to have a military option response to it. And in regards to, cybersecurity threats, which was on the rise at this point, she most definitely wanted to have some elements to that. So this team was kind of built based upon that idea. So as a ROTC cadet, got to eventually fill the role of a defense cyber operations team leader, which led a team of about 2 to 3 soldiers, actually about 2 to 5 soldiers, depending on what was being asked and what needed to be done. And over the 3 years that I was in school, kind of wore dual hats. We had some special missions come up where they were like, "Leah, I think you'd be a great person to kind of come watch out for this and kind of lead this effort. Can you do it?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So held multiple hats: incident response commander, working with industry partners to kind of help figure out bad stuff in their network, as well as just doing the day-to-day, managerial in charge of soldiers type of deal, as well as special missions. So we had like these special things that popped up. And then in college, so College of Charleston, if you don't know, is a liberal arts institution in Charleston, South Carolina. Was founded in 1770, and they have a pretty good computer science program. However, at the time, security was taught in none of their classes. It was more so on how do you build it, and even then, their curriculum was slightly dated. So I became the annoying guy in the classroom asking, "Well, how does security fit into this?" and that sort of thing. So moving into that, decided because there was no security presence, I was just going to make one. So I founded the cybersecurity club at College of Charleston, which later, as I found out last semester actually, so I founded it in about 2014, 2015. It's now one of the largest organizations on their campus, which is pretty cool. So not only did I was able to like create something out of nothing, but then I was also able to rally people behind me, in an effort to kind of help build something and raise awareness and that sort of thing. I can tell you all types of funny stories and interacting with the college itself. and saying, well, I want to create this cybersecurity club, and I want to, I got plans to help build a lab for security students, and I'm working with these industry people around the low country to help donate equipment. Like, can you help me set up a lab? And they're like, you want to do what? Like, what are you trying to do? So lots of funny stories. But at the end, after graduating college, decided that I was, I had fun at Soteria, but I kind of wanted to expand my horizons a little bit. So moved forward to become a SOC analyst at SPAWAR, which I think is now NICWICH or NIWICH, NIWH or NIWC. Became a SOC analyst for Defense Health Agency. So all the military, the medical buildings and units and things across the entire world that were US based. I sat on their network looking for bad stuff. So eventually at the end, again, just to reiterate, college graduate, Army officer, and then a SOC analyst. So my path post-college, so this one was a little challenging because I went, again, super weird, went through like a lot of different things. But after commissioned in the office, as an officer in the National Guard, my official title became cyber warfare officer. And then from there, I guess kind of doing it in order. I was still maintained my SOC analyst role until we got orders, South Carolina National Guard got orders to mobilize. So had to put a hold on my, civilian career as a SOC analyst and just security professional, and then go be a military officer. Essentially did that. Had some broadening roles, went to school for 4 months, came back, worked as like a communications officer. Essentially, how do we communicate on the battlefield kind of deal, but our battlefield was like an office. And then also developed some security training for the soldiers that were assigned to me and the soldiers that were part of my team, for an entire unit of roughly 100 soldiers overall, in preparation for this mobilization. So then when we mobilized, my official title became crew commander, and then shortly during this mobilization also became an operator. So kind of doing just stuff for the government that needed to get done. So after I completed my mobilization, I was at a crossroads again, a lot of crossroads. So the first one was, what do? Do I go back to being a SOC analyst, which is, I still have that possibility. They held a position for me. Do I go and go back to that, or do I look for the next thing? And I decided that my skills at this point, not only on the managerial side, but also on the technical side, was kind of no longer SOC analyst level. Typically, SOC analysts are generally seen, unless you're like a senior SOC analyst or something, is generally seen as just an entry level role. So at this point, I was like, I don't think I'm entry level. I don't consider myself entry level anymore. So, and being that it was a contractor role, decided that I was going to go into something else. So, did a lot of searching, applied to a lot of different places, and eventually took a position as director of assessments for Rhino Security Labs, based in Seattle. So if you follow their blog posts or anything, you know that Rhino Security Labs does a lot with cloud security and AWS security. And I think recently they've been doing a lot of stuff with container security. So my job was to essentially oversee the pen test team and the assessment team. If you're following my chart, you later see that it was unemployed. Afterwards, after accepting this position and moving from the East Coast all the way to Seattle, and buying a house and relocating, it was I was pretty let go. I was let go abruptly, pretty fast, and it kind of shook my core a little bit, because it was something that I was somewhat expecting, but not. But it really, my my boss at the time and myself, we never really had a discussion of performance and, you know, that sort of thing. So totally woke up one morning, checked my phone, and then saw like, I'm letting you go. And I was just like, oh no, I I wasn't prepared for this. So if anyone's ever been fired or laid off, like it just kind of hurts. And you go, you know, this is the first time that it had ever happened to me. And I was like, oh man, what do I do? You know, for one, it kind of bruised the ego a little bit because I've done like all these great, amazing things. But at the same time, I was like, ah, man, you know, this sucks. But at the same time, felt a lot of anger. Like, why is this happening? Like, I moved all the way out here. I took the position. You know, I worked, you know, ridiculous hours to try to make things happen, and you know, it just fell through. But also sadness, and then you know, even leading into that, a little bit of depression because I'm just like, oh no, like you know, this, you know, kind of woe is me a little bit at the initial shock and awe. And then afterwards, after the dust settled, panic crept in and anxiety crept in like, oh no, like I now have a mortgage payment and how am I going to pay my bills? And how is me and I got married at the time. I was married, or I am married. So how are me and my wife going to pay the bills? How are we going to survive essentially? And cost of living, if you're from Seattle or been there, like it's not cheap. Um, so it was from this like kind of unemployed phase is where like the rest of this talk kind of takes over. And this is where a lot of lessons were learned, you know, in hindsight. So the first thing I did was, you know, get get a like get understand the situation that you're operating in essentially. There's a great website called cyberseek.org. And I think this is a quick note. I have like a slide and a half of references of, you know, websites and stuff to go check out, and I'll post my slides for you guys as well. So don't feel like you have to like take notes super fast or anything. My slides will be on Twitter tonight or tomorrow for you guys to go check out, and pull down and take a look at. But there's a website called cyberseek.org. I think it's put on by NIST, or one of the federal agencies, or a federal entity. And it essentially does like a snapshot of the cybersecurity market at any given time. So what you're looking at on the screen now is June 2019's you know, snapshot of you know, CyberSeek. So at the time, CyberSeek was aware of 313,000 you know, job openings, and then they saw the total, you know, seeing the total force was 715,000. And again, the supply of cybersecurity workers is like super low. And then you see the top cybersecurity job titles, and there's a lot of data that you can pull from this, right? You know, read between the lines a little bit. I thought, oh man, like I'm not good. I've done like federal stuff, I've done military stuff, I've done commercial stuff in each and different entities in each of those. I should have no problem, you know, finding a job or whatever. But then moving, trying to find the job that I wanted, and the job that I wanted was pen tester, or in that vein of pen tester, offensive security. I really didn't have a lot of hands-on experience. I had a lot of book knowledge. I had the certs. I had the college degree. I had the, you know, experience on the military side doing offensive stuff, but not so much doing commercial stuff. So taking a look at CyberSeek, you know, kind of doing an aside, if you're new to the InfoSec world and you're trying to get involved, this is a great website to check out, because not only are you going to be able to get a somewhat good snapshot of the environment, but you're also going to be able to kind of take a look at these top job titles a little bit, and you can kind of do some more research on it, try to figure, you know, see which one that you're interested in. Something I do when people are trying to look for jobs and such is I point them to these kind of areas so that they can take a look at and try to figure out, you know, what is it that I want to do. And we'll cover more of that shortly thereafter. Again, the InfoSec career, your career is so big. Like, how do you pick? You've got digital forensics, you got threat hunter, you've got security orchestration and automation, you know, SOAR, you got engineering if you want to build things, pen testers, consultants, you got ICS systems, SCADA systems, right? So how do you pick? Well, you just kind of learn everything, really, you know, and this is most definitely easier said than done. But at this point, when you're trying to figure out, you know, once you figure out the role that you're wanting to go into, and it can be very broad, it could be like, I want to go into defensive security. I want to go into offensive security. I want to go into IT. I want to go into networking, right? You know, at that point, you just eliminated a bunch of many different parts of the whole pie and kind of narrowed your scope a little bit, so that you can kind of dig a little bit deeper. So being unemployed, realizing now that I wanted to go into offensive security, this is kind of where my drive and determination sets in, right? Because the clock now starts, right? Um, and being able to learn everything is, again, easier said than done because most people have jobs. Again, I have a newborn, so I'm finding that a lot of the free time I had before is no longer there. But being unemployed and only being married and not having any kids at the time, I had a lot of free time now. So through my own experience, I learned how to build and secure things again, but not break them. So so to narrow my scope even further from offensive security, I know I want to go into security, and in offensive security, I started focusing on application security, and really that was for two reasons. One, I had never been like a software engineer or a developer, like a full stack or front end or back end developer, or you know, and working on a dev team building something, right, using some of these, you know, software development life cycles like agile or waterfall. And my dev skills were like super lacking. You know, at this point, I had some IT, and then immediately went into security. So I had some scripting, I had some other type of experience, but really understanding development at a level that companies have development shops, like I just didn't have that, and that's something I wanted to learn. And then going into application security, it was just kind of like job security at this point. Just about every organization has some type of application, and whether it be a web app, a mobile app, or both. And then typically, if it's a mobile app, it probably is utilizing some web technology like an API or something. So being able to speak to application security became paramount in just about every single role I applied for, which is most definitely kind of where I sunk my time even further, is just AppSec. So in order to kind of gain my knowledge, I ordered the Web App Hackers Handbook, which is most definitely dated. Books do get dated. But there was still a lot of good, solid information in there that I could pull from, right? Even though it may be dated, they may be using an analysis of, you know, a programming language that may be obsolete at this point or is not very much in use, but it's pretty similar to what's the most current version. And then there's a lot of tactics, techniques, and procedures that's taught in this book that you can, you know, you can utilize and build your own notes off of. And then downloaded the free version of Burp. Burp is free. I think the only difference is between the free and the paid version is that you don't get the automatic scanning of applications and stuff. There's some Burp extensions that are only for the paid version, and you don't get Burp Collaborator, which isn't too hard to just spin up a DigitalOcean or a web server that can accept incoming calls. And then at the time, Portswigger also unveiled their Web Security Academy, which is another great resource if you're trying to understand application security concepts, like what is CORS, what is cross-site scripting, what is SQL injection, how can I like use and understand these vulnerabilities. So the Web Security Academy isn't just like a wiki post or anything. They actually have labs that you can run through. And again, the only thing you need is a browser and the free version of Burp. And then another thing is VulnHub. VulnHub has a lot of virtual VMs that are vulnerable that you can utilize too. So using so during this time kind of worked through this piece and started learning, right? And I was starting to pick up dynamic testing pretty quickly. So how can I translate that to future employers? This is a quick snapshot of like all the companies I applied to, and red means either I didn't get a call back, or I didn't get I didn't either I got a call back, or if I did get a call back, I didn't get to move forward with it. But typically, a lot of these positions, I get dropped into some vulnerable environment. I have I have a certain time frame to find as many vulnerabilities I could within the environment, and then I have to write a report on it. So not only did I have to learn new coding languages, networks, new tools, techniques, procedures, automation, and host defenses, but I also had to be able to write and make it look nice, which is a lot. But luckily for me, I had a lot of experience. I had programming experience from college. I had writing and styling and report writing work from doing consulting, as well as college, just writing reports for college and such. And then defense thinking and hardening the systems from my time as a sysadmin and a SOC analyst, but also offensive thinking from actually leading a team of pen testers on the commercial side and doing offensive stuff on the federal side. So that is kind of my path to the dark side, so to speak. And then moving forward, eventually landed a role with Invisium, which is a great company. I love working for these guys. I work with people that are consistently making me smarter, that are consistently challenging me and pushing me to kind of learn more and do more, so to speak. So moving forward, what is the key takeaways from this word vomit that I've been doing for a while? Learn the basics. Like, I can't emphasize this enough. A lot of people just want to get to the sexy stuff, the RCE. I want to pop the domain controller. I want root on a server. I want admin on the app. I want to be able to do all these things. But in order to be able to do those things, you have to understand just basic networking. You have to understand basic coding. You have to understand how Windows environments work, how Linux environments work. Excuse me. So for networking, understanding network principles that are aligned with CompTIA and NetPlus and CCNA. Again, not an advocate for like go get the cert, take the multiple choice test, but like use the certifications in their course objectives as kind of like a roadmap to your knowledge to learn, right? They do a great job mapping it out to say, breaking it down into topics into bite-sized pieces so you can understand it. Coding, if you're trying to get into offensive security, like you have to be able to code, you have to be able to script, and Python is typically your go-to for this. Lately, once you kind of, I'm not going to say master, but once you feel like you got a good grip on a programming language, try to do the same thing in a different one. Understand how languages do certain things. And for me, the next step was to go into Go, which Go is it's similar to Python, but it does a lot of things differently. And sometimes one programming language works better than the other for whatever it is you're trying to do. And then Windows, like, go beyond basic usage, like how do I change my desktop and that sort of thing, but like learn about the underlying features and how Windows does stuff. And then learn how to harden those Windows environments, right? So Windows internals, if you are wanting to dig into Windows environments, Windows internals is your bread and butter. And Microsoft Press has a book called Windows Internals. I think it might be on its 7th edition. It's pretty recent. Check it out. Like, it does way deep dive down into it. And then Linux, like, I feel like everyone should be comfortable in a Linux environment. You don't need to be an expert in it, but you should be able to navigate around on the command line. You should be able to understand services and processes, and like maybe write a shell script or two, and just be familiar. Because a lot of the work that I come into, a lot of my clients are building on top of Linux servers. Some are using IIS and writing .NET applications, but the majority of them are writing on Linux servers. So my next thing would be like, find your thing, right? So just kind of goes back to like, what do I go into, right? So for my kind of making this a little bit easier, do you like to build things, right? If you like to build things, then you're looking for engineer or developer in your title. If you're trying to figure out how things work, you're looking, again, you're kind of looking for engineer, looking for analyst, you're looking for threat hunter in your title. If you're trying to break things, right, you're looking at pen testers. You're also looking at threat hunters again, because in order to help defend your network and, you know, write uh, indicators of compromises and other things, then you have to be able to understand and think like an adversary or red teamer, right? And then if you want to fix broken things, then that's an engineer position all day, right? You know, server falls over, who do we call, kind of deal. So then, so now kind of my advice is find a mentor. I think throughout my career so far, I've got about 6 or 7 different mentors in like 4 or 5 different fields. You know, I have some that's totally specialized in blue team operations. I have some that specialize in store operations. I have some that specialize in offensive security. I have some that specialize just in business. They don't know anything on the security side, but they know business pretty well. So how do you find a mentor? Twitter is a solid resource. Don't underestimate cold emails, right? A lot of the more well-known kind of security people may have like their own an email account that you can like reach out to. Meetups in your local area, right? So download the Meetup app and go check it out. There's a lot of good ones out there. Conferences like this, right? And then check for Slack groups, right? If you don't know what kind of Slack group out there, you know, you can easily do like a Azure Slack group or a Windows Slack group or AWS Slack group or mobile Slack group or Java Slack group. Like they're out there. Just got to Google for them, right? And then kind of in the same vein of finding a mentor, like play with new technology. Never underestimate the power of a VM or a container, right? And then if you don't know how to do something, like Google's your best friend. Google is the best sim. So use it to find tutorials on how to do stuff. How do I create an Apache server? How do I create an Nginx server? How do I create an Apache server with an Nginx reverse proxy? You know, or look on GitHub for open source projects and then contribute, right? You can pull down, being able, like working in Git is most definitely a skill. So being able to pull down some, you know, being able to operate within a Git environment and understand like pull, push, merge, and what that means, will most definitely give you some more credibility. And then here's my secret sauce, right? So my secret sauce is just talk to everyone. Like, don't be afraid to approach people. Too many people in our industry get that, well, that person knows way too much. I'm just a peon. They're not going to want to talk to me. The vast majority of people in this industry want to talk to you. Like, they love getting asked questions because people like to talk about themselves, and people like to talk just in general, right? Just ask a question, I guarantee you. And then generally look at it this way: if you go to ask them a question and they tell you, you know, they're kind of rude or they brush you off or whatever, that's probably not the person that you want to talk to anyways, right? Get involved in your local community InfoSec, right? So showing up to BSides is great. Check out your local ISA chapter. That's another great one if where you live has one. And then if it doesn't have one, then create one, right? You don't need to be someone that is a senior level executive that can create a chapter. Anyone can create a chapter. Anyone can create an OWASP chapter, a meetup. Clearly just say, hey guys, we're going to meet at XYZ at this time to talk about security. If no one shows up, broaden your reach, get more people to come, right? I guarantee you people will come. Next one is like build a website and host a blog where you can put whatever you're learning, right? And also, like, don't go to Wix. Like, Wix is not putting Wix or not putting down any websites like Wix or whatever, but you're going to gain so much more if you create like a droplet or a virtual machine on Azure or an EC2 instance on AWS, and then build off of that. You're just going to get so much from it. And then be fluent in the fundamentals. Knowledge is greater than search. So when I was looking to hire people, I cared more about what could you show me than what was on paper. What did you know, right? And I had questions I would ask to kind of gauge your knowledge and how deep you could go. They mentioned it in the previous slide, but the previous talk, but search gets you to an extent, to a point. Search might get you past HR or whatever, but then once you like really start talking to people who know what they're talking about, you're not going to be able to lie, right? You're not going to be able to like fluff it and fluff the answers, right? So I cared more about getting the job done. Can you get the job done? I need you to get done. And then do stuff. I think I mentioned this in Discord, but like CTFs, competitions, tech projects, personal and part of a team, right? So look at joining a CTF team, right? Look at hosting a CTF team, trying to get people to come join you, right? There's a lot of lessons learned and power in groups when in regards to learning. And then lastly was kind of create your own brand. So this is kind of like just for your own professional development. Every time I do a talk, I have slides that look a certain way, that kind of have my feel, my touch, my fingerprints all over it. When I hand out business cards, that just have my own personal information on it. When I'm networking with people, it has my own flair on it, something that says me, right? But brand is not only just marketing materials, it's also like, what do you stand for? What are your ethics? What are your values? That sort of thing. I guess that's kind of the end of my talk. At this point, I would ask questions, but I think I'm over on my time a little bit.
Just a few minutes, and everybody's waiting for raffle prizes.
Oh man, I'm standing between you guys and raffle prizes. Well, I'm sorry. So I have my Twitter information and email in here. Feel free to reach out. I'm most definitely I'll talk to you. I don't use Discord as much, so if you message me on Discord and I don't get back to you, don't take it personally. Reach out to me on Twitter or email. I'll be a lot faster. But thanks. That's all I got, Michael.
Thanks, Leo. We really appreciate it.
So, yeah, you're very welcome.
Yeah, definitely. It's great. We finally made it to BSidesGVL.
Yeah, for sure.